Welcome to the Green Wave Coaches Show with Gallatin football head coach Michael Stroup and Gallatin News sports editor Blaine Kellar. The Green Wave Coaches Show is brought to you by Tennessee Ace Hardware. Football season is grilling season. Stop by Tennessee Ace Hardware today and check out our large selection of Big Green Egg grills. The Larry Maynard Agency. Give Allstate agent Larry Maynard a call today for all your insurance needs. Macon Bank and Trust. For over 100 years, Macon Bank and Trust has offered a true hometown banking experience to help you meet your financial goals. Dairy Berries Heat and Air. Dairy Berries has been voted Sumner County's best heat and air for the past 8 years. For outstanding service, give us a call today. And the Tennessee Highway Safety Office. Remember, fans don't let fans drive drunk. Now, here are Coach Michael Stroup and Blaine Kellar.
Welcome back into yet another edition of the Green Wave Coaches Show. I'm, of course, Sumner County Sports Editor Blaine Kellar. He is Gallatin football coach Michael Stroup. If you're getting tired of this intro or of this, appreciate it while you can, because before you know it, the season will be over. We've only got, I think, at most about a month left if things go well in Gallatin's favor. And, we're in the penultimate week of the Tennessee high school football regular season. Feels like it's gone in a blur, Coach.
Yeah, it goes by faster and faster every year, and here we are sitting at week 10, and got a big game in front of us. Big game,
and of course a big game last week that Gallatin took care of business in a 37-6 win at Wilson Central. Coach, we'll start with the run game. As a team, over 200 yards rushing in that one. He had 4 rushing touchdowns. Of course, we've talked all season long about the passing success, and in some stints we've talked about how good your running backs have been. It feels like one of the members of this team that maybe felt left out was the offensive line, and they really proved themselves, it seems like, in that game on Friday.
Well, I maybe from the outside, the offensive line maybe feel like they're left out, but not from our perspective. Those guys are They get it done for us in the passing and running game. So, it all starts up front on both sides of the ball, and I thought that both units did a great job this past Friday.
Yeah, how do you think across this season that unit in particular has maybe made their presence felt? As you mentioned, it's not just the running game that's important there, but so much of Jackson Stroup's success too at quarterback comes from that pass protection.
Yeah, I think that they've done a really good job. Coach Pitts does a heck of a job with those guys and gets them prepared and gets them ready. And you're looking at an offensive line that 3 of them didn't even get any playing time last year, and two seniors. One of them got very little playing time. So it's basically a new core guys up there, and like I said, Coach Pitts does a great job, and we've been able to run the football. I think mostly in all of our games, and they've given up. I think they've given up 3 or 4 sacks all year. So they do a really good job.
Well, you mentioned kind of an inexperienced bunch, and that can either favor really well for some teams or it can be the Achilles heel for some others. So how have they filled in those roles as the season has gone on? And was there ever any learning curve for them whenever you kind of mentioned that long-term success they've been having?
Oh, yeah, there's been a learning curve all season, and whether it's whether it's blocked down and kicking out, or zoning on a 45-degree angle and working to the backer, or whether we're gap hinging on the backside, and keeping our head on the inside leverage instead of outside leverage. Those guys have got to learn that, and the pulls and the skip pulls, and getting a tight fit up front and things like that. Knowing who you're wrapping for. So those guys have done have grown week by week in doing that. So we're proud of them.
Is there one in particular that stands out to you in that regard of growing and learning and developing as the season goes on, or has that group just altogether impressed you?
I think altogether, I can sit here and talk about each one of them, and to single out one guy would probably be unfair, but all of them have grown into being a really good offensive lineman for us. And like I said, I could sit here and talk about each one of them and the job they've done for us. But again, they kind of have that lunch pail mentality, man. That blue collar, go to work type mentality, and it all starts with Coach Pitts up front. He does a good job for us.
Well, you got to give some love to the big boys up front. At some point this season, we had to, and as we mentioned, they hold up for Jackson Stroup in the passing game, and last week Zakian Brinkley in the running game. I know that he left with an injury, Coach, but he was really torching that first half, 151 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, and we were, and it's a credit to the offensive line and Zakian hitting hitting the down blocks a little bit, not being so wide. But, yeah, Zakian did a good job for us in the first half and really ran the ball well for us.
Last I heard, Coach, he was planning on getting an MRI Thursday, and I know that whenever our reporter was there for the Wilson Post, you mentioned that you thought it was more of a precautionary deal. So what has that process kind of been like, ever since he sustained that injury to where you are now here on Tuesday?
Well, they're working with him, and he was at practice yesterday and moving around. But trainers are working with him and just trying to make sure he's good to go and all that. But just want to make sure everything's on the up and up before we do anything else with him.
In regards to Zakian and maybe just injuries as a whole, it doesn't seem like this Gallatin team has really dealt with that all that much this year. You had an injury early in the year, if I'm not mistaken, LaDainian McMurray, right? And he came back, of course. But this one, at the end of the year, I'm curious what the difference is maybe there from a coaching perspective when you maybe get a guy hurt in week 2, week 3, as opposed to week 9, week 10.
Well, I mean, you're closer to the end of the year, and you got playoff implications, and Zakian's done a really good job for us, and he's a big part of our offense. And but when you get down here and this time of the year, you got to really have those guys, and you got to be lucky this time of year, and not deal with a whole lot of injuries. But we've got one, but at the end of the day, it's the next man up. Who's gonna take the torch and basically carry the weight that the kind did with that offensive line. And again, the offensive line's done a really good job. And Malachi Harper came in the second half and did well for us, and had a little, I guess, about a 31-yard scamper there to the house. And we got some other guys we're working back there behind Malachi to, it may be a 2 or 3 back offense before it's all said and done.
Yeah, junior Jaden Hoskins and Malachi Harper, like you mentioned, the sophomore, had a third-quarter rushing touchdown at Wilson Central. What have you seen from both of those guys in maybe the albeit limited playing time that they've been able to get back there?
Yeah, Malachi's done a really good job for us. He's one of those guys that got noticed on the scout team and practicing really hard, giving our guys a look and always felt he was athletic enough. But to play high school, play varsity ball, you got to grow up a little bit, and you got to be willing to do unselfish things. And one of those things is playing scout team and giving our guys a look. And he did a good job of that. He was being physical with them and not laying down and not brother-in-law it, as we call it in football. And he gave our guys a look, and that's kind of where I first noticed him. And he carried it over to JV games. About 4 weeks ago, about a month ago, I started seeing it carrying over to the JV games and him being physical. So, you get an opportunity, and you never know when your number's going to get called, and so. He's done a really good job for us. Do
both of those backs present the same thing? Of course, when you just look at the physique, I guess, of Zakian Brinkley, you know that this guy's going to punch it down your throat, just based on how he is built. When you look at Jaden and you look at Malachi, what kind of dynamic do those two bring? Is it similar, or is it different for both of them?
I think it's different for both of them. I think Malachi Malachi can probably be both. He can lower his shoulder and get the tough yards, I think, but he can also get those quick yards for you if you need to. Jaden is a guy that can probably take it to the house if he wants to. Jaden's just got to get a little bit more consistent in practice and and in games, be consistent with effort and attitude and things like that. And once he figures that out, he's going to be hard to handle.
As a team coach, I know that we mentioned those injuries, and it's to be determined how Zakaians will impact the rest of the season. But in your first years, it felt like you've been pretty fortunate with the health of your team.
Yeah. I think we've been fortunate to make it through this long without having really big injuries. You had one LD earlier in the year, but football's football. You're going to have injuries, and again, when you do it, you got to get the next guy ready and see who's going to carry the torch. So, right now we've got 2, maybe 3 guys. We got a freshman running back that we pulled up that we think that he's really running the ball hard, so he may jump in the mix as well.
Well, the running game, as you've mentioned all year long, is a very important part of what you guys do because it opens up the pass as well. And a couple of weeks ago, we mentioned that Jackson Stroup hit the all-time single-season passing yardage mark here at Gallatin. The passing touchdown at Wilson Central, he breaks the all-time single-season passing touchdown record, now sitting at 20 on the season. Coach, in your mind, what's more difficult, hitting that passing yardage mark or the passing touchdown record?
I don't know. I mean, they're both pretty hard. They're going to get harder before too long. But it's to be able to throw the football, you got to run the football. And Zakian went over 1,000 yards last week. Mm-hmm. And they both complement one another. And so when you got a running game, they got to put people in the box to stop the run. But also, that opens up the passing game. And so, again, it's a credit to that offensive line. I think it's a credit to the receivers we have. I felt like at receiver, we got to be a little bit more consistent at catching the ball. I think we had 3 drops or 4 drops last week. We were 12 of 18, and I think there was 3 or 4 drops out there. So we got to get better at that.
I know that we've talked a lot about that 2-week stretch that Gallatin had where it picked up the big win at Green Hill and then let one slip away against Cookeville. And, of course, that's been something that's been discussed a lot. Mm-hmm. But going on the road at Wilson Central and really what was a must-win game in the region, were you pleased with how your team responded and all of that?
Oh, yeah, I was pleased. I was more proud of the defense than anything. They carried over what we started in practice and got to the football, ran to the football, got a lot of people to the ball, and then we were able to, run our feet, wrap up, and get ball carriers to the ground. So, I was very pleased and proud of that defense for sure.
A good win for the Green Wave at Wilson Central this past week. Gallatin goes back on the road at Springfield this Friday. Stick around and we'll cover that soon.
Macon Bank and Trust Company is a proud supporter of the Gallatin Green Wave. For over 100 years, Macon Bank and Trust has offered a true hometown banking experience to help you meet your financial goal. We are local people with local decision-making and ready to serve you.
Derryberry's Heat and Air has been proudly serving the Middle Tennessee area for over 35 years. We have been voted Sumner County's best heat and air company for the past 8 years. For outstanding service, call Derryberry's at 615-452-8121. Football season is grilling season. The Big Green Egg is the perfect grill for everyone, from the backyard cook to the world's most acclaimed chefs. Stop at Tennessee Ace Hardware today and check out our large selection of Big Green Egg grills. It's the perfect grill for any grilling need.
As an Allstate agent in Gallatin, Larry Maynard knows many local families. His knowledge and understanding of the people in this community helps him provide customers with outstanding service. Give Larry a call at 615-452-1500.
He shoots, and he scores!
Welcome back to the Green Wave Coaches Show, brought to you by Main Street Media Television and our wonderful sponsors that you can see on the banner here. Admittedly, probably should have done a better job at memorizing these guys because they're right behind me, but you guys can see them throughout the whole show. Be sure to check them out and thank you, of course, for sponsoring this show. As we mentioned, Gallatin again on the road at Springfield this Friday. And you talked about how proud you were of your defense coach at Wilson Central. Got a taller task against an up-and-down Yellow Jackets team led by Clarence Cobbins, who's practically played every offensive position for Springfield this year. How difficult is it to defend a guy like that whenever he can line up basically anywhere?
Well, I think he's he's a dynamic football player for sure. And I don't know if you just got to hope to contain him. But he's a good football player on both sides of the ball for him. He plays corner, and then again he plays every other position. I don't think I've seen him play center yet, but he plays everywhere on the offensive side. So he's a good football player, and we're going to have our hands full for sure. It
was a couple of weeks ago. As a fellow former Springfield alum, I do follow the Jackets a little bit. So I think I was following how many different positions Clarence was playing at, and I think it was only a couple weeks ago that I said the only place he hasn't played is quarterback, and then the next game he lines up at quarterback. So the Springfield team, coach, up and down throughout the year. They're well coached, have been in a couple of state championship games a few years back, 2-1 at home, and I believe 2-4 on the road, which brings up the interesting split that you guys have of 0-3 at home and 5-0 on the road. Of course, you don't plan for that, but how have you kind of been able to assess that in a season where you have more games on the road than at home?
I think that I don't really haven't assessed it. We just haven't we haven't just closed the door at the house yet. And we've been able to do it on the road. But Springfield is like you said, they're well coached. Coach Wilson does a fantastic job over there of getting those guys ready. They've got great technique, and they're always in the right position, defensively and offensively. And we understand, when you look at it, they've got a lot of things offensively going on, but when you have a guy like Clarence, you try to get the ball into his hand as much as you can. Defensively, however, they're pretty rock solid over there. They're interior wise, D-line wise, they're pretty good, and they've got some guys in the secondary that make plays for them as well.
Well, Springfield, as I mentioned, made a few state championship games in Class 4A. Of course, Coach, you made your trip to the big dance a couple of times at USJ. Have you been able to connect with Coach Wilson over there at all based on those trips that you guys were at Cookeville?
No, not really. We've kind of shared some texts and some emails coming up, to the game. But no, we haven't talked about that. Coaches don't really talk about that kind of stuff as much as you might think.
One more for you here before we get to our one fun question to close out today's show. I know that this game isn't in Region 4 6A action, but when you look at the standings right now, there's a big log jam entering into that last week of the season. 3, 4, and 5 all have 3 losses on the year, all have 2 losses in region play. Is there any pressure? I know you want to focus on just this week. I understand, big game ahead of you. You want to go ahead and have that momentum going into that game, regular season finale against Lebanon. But is there any pressure knowing that last game of the season could decide if you get in or not?
I can't control any of that stuff, and we can't control any of it. We just got to go out there and play the best ball we can play. And, hopefully, the cards fall in our favor a little bit there. So, we just – us winning this game could help us playoff wise if we if there's even more of a log jam, as you might say. But this is an old rival game. This is an old rival game from the past. I don't think they've played since 2016, but I think these two programs have a storied history with one another, and it's. I imagine for some of the old guys out there, it's probably a big game, Super Bowl game type game. And one thing I've learned in my short time at Gallatin, everybody wants to measure up to Gallatin. So we've got to be ready and focused up and ready to play this week.
You touched on it at the start of your response there that this game could impact that postseason aspiration if things get even more of a logjam. How much have you looked into the tiebreakers beyond head-to-head in your region?
You've got tiebreakers, and then you have the head-to-head stuff, and then you have, overall record, and maybe you have situations where, who you've played in their records. So, that all that stuff goes hand in hand. It can get a little sticky at times, but, all we've done is told the kids, all we got to do is just keep winning. We can't wait on somebody else to help us out. We don't need to put our fate in somebody else's hand. So, we just got to go out there and play ball the way we're capable of playing. And if we're able to do that, then we'll be fine.
Loved what lineman Mason Duke said at the end, talking to our reporter, Andy Telly, just win out. That's all we got to do.
Yeah.
The last 2 games after that Wilson Central game just said we got to win out.
Yeah.
So starts this Friday at Springfield and will end in the regular season finale against Lebanon. Fingers crossed, knock on wood, beyond that. We'll take one more break here on the Green Wave Coaches Show, and when we come back, our one fun question. Coach Michael Stroup, stay tuned.
Football season is grilling season. The Big Green Egg is the perfect grill for everyone. From the backyard cook to the world's most acclaimed chefs. Stop at Tennessee A's Hardware today and check out our large selection of Big Green Egg grills. The perfect grill for any grilling need. Dairy Berry's Heat and Air has been proudly serving the Middle Tennessee area for over 35 years. We have been voted Sumner County's best heat and air company for the past 8 years. For outstanding service, call Dairy Berry's at 615-452-8121.
Macon Bank and Trust Company is a proud supporter of the Gallatin Green Wave. For over 100 years, Macon Bank and Trust has offered a true hometown banking experience to help you meet your financial goal. We are local people with local decision-making and ready to serve you.
Watch it! Did that guy even see that girl on her bike?
Just like looking for other cars before switching lanes, drivers should keep their eyes out for those traveling on bikes. When a crash occurs between a vehicle and a bike, it's the cyclist who is most likely to be injured. Give cyclists room and do not pass too closely. Riders have the same rights and responsibilities as those behind the wheel.
Be aware, be alert. Brought to you by THSO, the Tennessee Highway Safety Office.
Welcome back to the Green Wave Coaches Show, closing out with our one fun question with Coach Michael Stroup. And as I mentioned in the second half of the show, I'm a Springfield alum, Springfield guy. Worked in Robertson County with the newspaper over there last year. Got to cover the Yellow Jackets then. So bit of a homecoming for me, admittedly, and excited to be at the Jackets Nest on Friday. And Coach, it got me thinking, what homecomings or former employers or former staffers have you had the chance of playing and going against, and how special was that for you in those moments?
Well, before I answer that question, do they call it the Jacket Nest?
Jackets Nest, yeah.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah,
the Wave Yard, Jackets Nest.
Wave Yard sounds a little bit better than Jackets Nest. But anywho, yeah, I've had a couple of instances where I've coached against former teams. I've had pleasure of coaching for and coaching underneath guys. When I was at Scotts Hill, I had a game against McNary Central, who was a place of I had worked as a receivers and DBs coach, and then again I was at Scotts Hill and played Adamsville, where I was the assistant head coach in DC at one time for Brandon Gray, and we played in the first round of the playoffs, and Brandon and Adamsville had kind of gotten us a couple years before in the regular season, and somehow we ended up in different regions, and we ended up playing in the first round. We were a 4 seed, and they were number 1 undefeated team in the state, and they were number 1 seed. But we were a pretty good 4 seed. It's kind of weird how that was, but we ended up upsetting them and beating them. And Brandon didn't talk to me for about 6 months, but we're good friends, man. Both our boys are friends, and he's a good guy. But yeah, it is kind of special when you can kind of go back and get a W.
Well, this is going to be a follow-up to that a little bit. You've brought up that Scotts Hill and Adamsville game quite a bit. And I think I asked you a few weeks back where certain wins ranked among your all-time. It sounds like that one's really, really special to you.
Well, it was one of those things where, and it's nothing to do with mine or Brandon's relationship. We're really good friends and talk to each other a lot. But it was one of those things where we just didn't get a lot of respect, and we didn't feel like we were going in as a 7-3, 4 seed, and we were pretty good. We felt we were pretty good, and I remember doing an interview, and I was with the Jackson Sun, and and everybody was asking me questions like, every question was about Adamsville. They never once asked me about Scott Schill or any of our players or anything, and it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And then, finally, I think it was Brandon Shields with the Jackson Sun finally asked me at the end. He said, "Well, what's your biggest concern?" And so I kind of sarcastically replied, "Well, my biggest concern is I don't know what uniform they're going to wear. I don't know if they're going to come out in their smoky grays or they're all reds or maybe all black. And on top of that, they got black helmets or they got silver helmets. And I don't know which ones they're going to do." So, at that point, I was kind of fed up a little bit with all the, it was just, we got pretty good players too. So, that kind of, that was a good win.
Well, I'd love to see you a little bit fired up there, Coach. It might be the most.
You just hadn't asked the right question.
Well, look, Scotts Hill, 7-3, 4 seed, made history that year.
Mm-hmm.
Gallatin, if they win out, has a chance to be a 7-3, 4 seed in Region 4, 6A. We'll see how that plays after this week's game at Springfield. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another edition of the Green Wave Coaches Show. We'll see you next week.
You've been watching the Green Wave Coaches Show with Gallatin football head coach Michael Stroup and Gallatin News sports editor Blaine Kellar. The Green Wave Coaches Show is brought to you by Tennessee Ace Hardware, the Larry Maynard Agency, Macon Bank and Trust, Derryberry's Heat and Air, and the Tennessee Highway Safety Office.